Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live. It is Status Coup on a Sunday. What is today? February 26th. Still a lot going on in the utter disaster that is the East Palestine train explosion and aftermath. A lot of what I believe is the government, the local government, the federal government, the EPA, frankly, either intentionally covering things up or grossly incompetent. It might be a mixture of both. We are hopefully going to have some guests on. I was waiting for a couple folks to get back to me, both from East Palestine as well as in Flint. A couple Flint residents who have been fighting the good fight in Flint against that environmental cover up went to East Palestine over the weekend for Aaron Brackovich's town hall. And after the fact, actually stayed and helped East Palestine residents testing and digging for soil, which, to my knowledge, the EPA has not even started doing soil testing. So we're going to have a Flint guest on in a few minutes, I'm hoping. She said she was going to come on to explain what she saw. And this is Melissa Mays, who I've interviewed many times on this channel. She has been fighting along with other activists in Flint for 7-8 years. The water is still contaminated in Flint. She knows what she's talking about. She's unfortunately familiar with how the EPA, the government, cover up environmental contamination, sweep it under the rug. She was in East Palestine with residents. Let me show you a picture here so you kind of see. This was some of them testing by the creek yesterday. Let me full screen that. So that's Melissa all the way to the right. Ashley, who's an East Palestine resident in the middle. Naira from Flint over there. So we're going to have Melissa on because I am told by both Ashley in the middle and Melissa that literally digging this soil. Let me just read what Ashley wrote, and hopefully Ashley will be joining too. To tell you the truth, it's not easy to book guests all the time for this because people are sick and not feeling well in East Palestine, understandably. So Ashley told me, we went down to the water today. I'm a little loopy. It's almost comparable to drinking a lot. A bunch of other people were in shock and said they felt the same in their homes too. I have heard from people that when they are in town, in the village for a little too long, it's almost like getting a head rush and you feel a little loopy and disoriented. Some people have said to me, it's almost like feeling drunk. So we are hopefully, oh, there she is. So we're going to have a resident from East Palestine joining now. Ashley, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
I was actually just showing the picture with you, Melissa, and Naira yesterday, I believe it was, by the creek.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining because I know you're extremely busy. You have, like other residents, been trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yep.
Let's start with the Aaron Brockovich event on Friday. What are kind of some of the things you learned, and then let's move on to over the weekend because you all you along with Melissa and others were trying to dig up soil in various areas, and needless to say, it didn't go well.
It was pretty bad. As we started to go in more on time and being there and around it and disrupting things, we started to really notice we were having tingling, lightheadedness, a lot of different issues. And my thumb that I was even wearing gloves with went numb in a certain spot, which we do have a video. I'm not sure if she has it or we can show you later, but a part of it went purple, just exactly where the water hit it through my glove.
Your thumb?
Yeah.
Wow.
It went numb, tingling. We felt really lost. Like when you walk into a room and you forget something. That was the whole entire time when we were getting ready to leave. Like we started to take gloves off. We kind of felt discombobulated. We didn't know what was going on. Then we had to go back to doing what we were doing. And it was just really odd feeling.
And this was by the creek?
Yeah.
Jesus. And by the creek, were you guys digging up soil near the water? What were kind of some of the things you were smelling and seeing?
Yeah. It was by the creek, and I have had those side effects in my own home, but not to that extent and that severe. Um, it smelled, it's a very odd smell. It kind of smells like gas, paint thinner, a bunch of different chemicals that you kind of smell and you know you shouldn't be breathing it, that all of those mixed together.
And Lewis actually interviewed a couple a few days ago, and one of the concerns that the woman had was there's kids playing by the creek still.
Yeah.
And you're saying that you guys are feeling loopy. Melissa, who will be joining us in a little bit, was telling me, like, at a certain point, she was like, we got to leave. This isn't safe.
Yeah.
And there's still kids playing by there. And as far as I know, there's no, like, stay away signs, beware.
No.
And you were saying, does it smell like chemicals, gas? What does it smell like?
It's like a mix of that, like paints, gases. It's really hard to pinpoint just because I've never smelled anything like that. But I mean, as soon as you smell it, you know that it's not right. Like, it's something you should not be around. We even had respirators on, chemical ones, and we were still smelling it through those masks.
Yeah, I'll show. Melissa sent me a picture. So you guys were wearing full-on respirators, and you're still smelling it through that.
Yeah. And we had chemical gloves on. We had the booties to protect our feet just so we didn't bring any contaminants that were wet soil into our homes, because as soon as that wet soil dries, it can be airborne again because these chemicals don't break down.
And can you kind of describe, we were talking earlier and you said it's not only digging up soil, it's just kind of going into town.
Yeah.
It's not like a huge village, East Palestine, but just being in town for a half hour, you've said you and others are kind of experiencing kind of loopiness. Some folks are driving kind of all over the place.
It seems like people are under the influence of alcohol. If you sit on the road and watch for a little bit, you'll see people swerving. They're not on their cell phones, which is alarming. And they're kind of swerving, distracted. And I felt the same way before. I've even, when I was driving, was worried someone's going to wreck into me, but I'm also feeling that same thing to where I had to pull over.
Jesus. Meanwhile, they're telling you everything's fine and dandy. The tests in the house are fine. The water. And what have they said about the soil? Because I haven't gotten a straight answer from the EPA if they are even doing the testing.
I heard they were. I have heard nothing else other than I heard they were going to be doing soil testing.
And I want to show this picture. This is from the creek. So does that regularly look that way, where there's kind of like that brown splotch in the creek?
Sometimes you'll see similar things like that, or like a foam, but it's usually white or, a little bit off in color just because that's fish eggs or something natural occurring. But I've never seen anything like that. Out of all the years I've been camping, swimming in the same waters, I've never seen a buildup like that.
And normally you would see fish and kind of other things in the water, but you weren't seeing that?
No, we did. I'm sorry. We did find one dead fish, but that was it. I flipped over some rocks, and normally that area is covered with crawfish and at least some kind of water insect, like nymphs, dragonfly nymphs. You'll see those. They look like little caterpillars almost in the water. There, I didn't see anything like that. There was nothing even living in that water.
Can you kind of talk about, hopefully Melissa joins us soon, but you had the CTEH, which was the testers. They were the air testers contracted out by Norfolk Southern. Shockingly, they told you everything was fine. The levels were fine. But then when you had an independent tester, come in and test, and they found moderate levels of contamination. I'll put this up here. I redacted everything, so your address won't be on there, but they found total volatile organic compound concentration was moderate with levels of 600 NGL. That is not nothing. So this is the independent air tester, whereas Norfolk Southern told you everything was fine.
Yeah.
What did the independent air tester tell you about the contaminants in your house?
Some of the chemicals that are in the air that were released from the train actually can't even be detected with the machine that he has from his lab, because these were all samples taken from vials and sent into labs. So it did take a little while to get them back, but
Mm-hmm.
even sending those in, they couldn't all be identified.
So he's calling it moderate, even though he doesn't even have all the proper equipment to be able to test for all the chemicals.
So there may be a way to industrial, like to check, because it is like an industrial chemical. So there may be a different way to check it.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you look at the day when that was taken, it was 10 days from the last time I was actually in my house more than 10 minutes.
Wow.
So I think there was probably 1 or 2 times that I went in between that just to feed a lizard and change a light bulb, because I could see it on my security cameras. The light went out.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, nothing was open, nothing was moved around, and it still came up with that amount.
And they found volatile. They found a moderate level in paints, varnishes, PVC cement. But again, I mean, they basically don't have the capability of testing for all the chemicals. So if they found a moderate level on what they're able to look for, who the hell knows what's there? Yeah. Let me bring in Stella now. Hold tight, Ashley. Okay. Stella, we've been talking on Facebook a little bit, and you've had one hell of a time dealing with this. Headaches, lips burning, nausea, breathing issues. Husband also having headaches, burning nose. Kids have been having headaches. And you've also been talking about the fact that they're not really doing soil samples.
No, they're not doing soil samples. And truthfully, we haven't even heard what's in the water. They've taken 2 million gallons of contaminated water out. Nobody has said what it's contaminated with. They have that water stored at our city park in big tanks the whole way around the park. I went over there the other day. There's kids riding their bikes. There's people jogging. There's a lady pushing a stroller with her kid behind the bike on it. They're riding by the pump that's pumping the water out of the creeks, and it sprays off a mist. It's like, I told my husband, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Do these people not know that they're jogging around toxic waste? And we don't even know what's in it. The soil, my son just took some videos. Trucks are leaving with that soil in it. It is blowing all over. The road is covered, absolutely covered in mud right out where they came. The street sweeper has run spraying that soil all over town. They don't know what's in. You know, they're storing that stuff at the park. Close the park. There's kids going there. I just gave 2 of my kids Tylenol. Everybody that you talk to is sick. It's coming from somewhere. They're testing the water and they're testing the air. What are they testing it for? They haven't even told what's in the water, what's in the what's in the air. What are they testing it for? They testing the water for bacteria? This isn't bacteria.
There's a chance now there might be bacteria present in the gas bubbles being released too. So that's another thing Melissa May might have a little more information on.
Right. There's chemicals in it too, though.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you let people jog around? I'm not talking a couple little small tanks. These are humongous the whole way around the park. People are jogging around like, hey, they told us it was safe. It's just, to me, it's insane.
And what's also, Ashley, we were talking, it also, the weather affects things. So like you were saying that if it's a little warmer in a day, you might be able to smell the chemicals even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can. And when you leave town, you come back. My husband went down and volunteered. One of the big places in town that's been passing out food and water and things for the people. The biggest place there is to be able to go get this stuff is right on that creek. My husband went down and helped unload water. It rained that day. He came home and walked in the house, sat down in the chair, and I said, go change your clothes. It smelled so bad of that chemical. Our city building, go in there and pay your water bill. My husband, he said, it stinks so bad. He said, I feel so sorry for those women that are working in that. And, it's like, I have been, I don't know how many people have told me, I don't know why you have to be so negative. All you're doing is scaring people. We have to trust in our government. We have to trust in the EPA. I've been banned from some of the Facebook pages for stirring the pot and being Nancy negative. I'm like, really? I'm not trying to be negative here. I don't want people to die. I think that's pretty positive.
Mm-hmm.
Go ask the people of Flint how much they trust the EPA. The EPA is not the EPA, not that everyone in the EPA has bad motives, but the EPA is there to protect business, just like most of the government is. And I'll tell you what, they didn't even tell the people that they're not testing for dioxin, which is formed when you combust vinyl chloride.
And so, do you know what's going to happen if they do find dioxin? That chemist, we had an expert from Harvard, did a talk, and he said that if they find dioxin, it will cause economic devastation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just going to be East Palestine that they're going to have to evacuate. It's probably going to be 200 miles. He said, do you understand the implications economically for the whole country if they find dioxin? So do you think they're going to look for it? And what's going to happen if I talked to my daughter today. They have this independent chemist guy coming down. He started Saturday taking soils. So if he finds dioxin, so what? What are we going to do? Hold it up and put it on Facebook? Look, there's dioxin. People, quit being negative, Stella. It's just, to me, I just find the whole thing absolutely nuts. When I went over to the park and saw those people jogging around and all those kids playing, I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
What's also amazing to me, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't really hear reflected in the national media, I don't know about the local news, how bad it smells in various parts of town. I don't hear them talking about that.
No,
people feel drunk and loopy, and when you go to pay your water bill, it stinks in the building. I don't hear that on the news.
One reporter from the New York Post got a nosebleed while she was doing an interview.
Yep. All of the people I've encountered. Yep.
On an interview. I didn't see anything in the New York Post where she said, hey, I got a nosebleed.
Yep. I've had people come into my house and say, wow, my teeth hurt. And I've warned them before they go in.
I've been saying their teeth and gums hurt.
Yep. And it's really odd, like how you said your lips. Well, my tongue went numb. It started tingling, and other people that came inside my house and then started to leave, you get a chemical coating inside your mouth. And everyone that has been with me, reported with me, or have talked to has said that they have had some type of reaction or felt dizzy and needed to leave.
And I think there's another important thing, because I see it in the comments of this stream. I've seen it elsewhere. Not that people are mean, negative. They don't mean anything by it, but people are saying, get out of there, leave. Well, where are people
It's not
supposed to
that
go?
easy.
Where are people
If someone
supposed to
would
go?
like to buy me a house because I have a mortgage that I'm going to have to default on if I really want to get another loan, and situations don't really present themselves like that. Like, no one's going to say, here's a house for you and your kids. Or the mother down the road that her daughter has rashes all over her, having nosebleeds, having respiratory issues. This is a woman that is working and trying to live in a hotel at the same time because she can't go into her town. So that's where the real issue is. We're kind of stuck.
I have 10 granddaughters. We've got 47 family members here. I can't. Oh, come on, Darren, let's go. Leave my grandkids here. Not going to happen.
And how far do we go at that point? Because I'm 4 miles away and I can smell it. Or what? No, we're 4 miles away and I can smell it outside. Right now, I can smell it more than what we smelled in the past couple of days.
And it's honestly, I keep putting in the headline cover up because I don't know what else to call it when what you're talking about is not being reflected in the mainstream news. You kind of hear vaguely, some people are having some symptoms, a headache, no, their eyes hurt. I mean, I'm hearing from people that are talking about nosebleeds, vomiting, their throats on fire.
Vomiting. I have been so dizzy. Like it's a weird feeling. It's like you said, like almost like you're drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't like fully function.
Yeah. Almost like dementia. That's what I said. Yeah. I feel like that's what it feels like. And some other people that I've talked to, even with Z here, we're going to call you Z because we've been having trouble with your name.
That's fine. No, that works.
Joining us is Zhuza, who her 9-year-old son got very sick after the original train fire. Before the burn, he was vomiting and shaking, and fortunately, he's feeling a little better. But you've been away for 2 weeks now. But even going back to your home in the short period you've gone back, it reeks. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, it's very distinct to me. It's very overwhelming. I feel like I'm literally blacking out just a few steps inside my house. I can't go in at all. It's bad.
And if you want to tell people, you're kind of having that tough choice to make now between, do you start looking for another place to live? And your son is 9 and kind of says, Mom, why can't we go home? Other kids are home, but you're trying to do what's best for him and yourself.
Yeah, it's been really hard explaining that to family who are just, hearing the stuff from the governors and, they're saying, it's fine, go back. But I mean, I know how I feel. I know I should trust my instincts. I know when it doesn't feel right. When I know I feel something's off, I'm not going to subject my son to something like that, especially since he's got health issues. I couldn't have a clear conscience after that if something were to happen.
And I don't know if you heard this, but I was talking to Ashley and Stella. I'm not hearing this on the national news, and I'm not hearing this even in local news, that the city building stinks, that if you go down by the creek, people feel loopy and drunk. I'm just hearing kind of these vague, some people have some symptoms, but I mean, it seems like it's much worse than is being described in the national media.
Yeah, it's very concerning. I mean, I see a lot of moms just posting pictures of their kids like on Facebook, even the surrounding areas. And they're like, we have this weird rash that just started showing up, or we have these other issues that match CDC symptoms for this chemical exposure. And like I said, I couldn't deny how sick I felt, and it's like a major gaslight. It's really frustrating. You would think people would be talking about it more at parent-teacher conferences. I spoke with the elementary principal, and he said they've smelled it in the school, especially when a train goes by. They had air come in, the same team come back in and test it again. They said, of course, it's still fine. But it's undeniable the issues that people are having. And what's really shocking to me is the fact that they match CDC symptoms for these chemicals. I don't know what else to say.
There's a lot of nosebleeds. I don't know how many people have said that their kids have nosebleeds. They've had nosebleeds, leg cramps and Charlie horses. I've had them so bad. And the thing with your teeth, okay, we might all have a stuffy nose. We might all have a chest cold. We don't all have teeth that hurt.
No.
And I want to ask you, Stella, Lewis, my reporter, interviewed some kids the other day, and they were saying in the middle school that they are allowing them to drink out of the water fountain. And I called the school to confirm that. And the school superintendent said to me, almost like he thought this made it safe. Well, we're not letting them drink from the actual fountain. They stopped that during COVID, but you could pour the water into the bottle. I said, you do know that if the water is contaminated, it doesn't matter if they're drinking directly from it or pouring into a bottle. And he didn't seem to really have a response to that. But it sounds crazy to me that kids are pouring water into their water bottles when that water, who the hell knows what's in it?
Especially when the rooms are stacked high with water that people have donated. I mean, we have more water than you can imagine, truckload after truckload. They've donated it to the school. Why are they drinking water out of their water bottles?
And Stella, you told Lewis a couple days ago that people are having trouble just getting services, meaning if their car breaks down or their laundry machine breaks, contractors or people don't want to come to East Palestine.
There have been so many people who have said AAA wouldn't tow their car into East Palestine, that Lowe's won't deliver to East Palestine. There's just been numerous. Can't find somebody to come and work on anything in East Palestine. Visiting nurses. One of my nieces is a nurse, and she said that she has talked to several of her colleagues that are visiting nurses that take care of elderly or they take care of chronically ill people in town. They won't come into town. They won't come into East Palestine. Now, if a nurse won't come into East Palestine, you know, who's going to want to come in? Who wants to come in here? Everybody, you know, keeps saying, oh, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. It can't be safe. People were sick. You know, maybe 4 people are making up. Maybe I'm making up my symptoms. There's not, you know, there's hundreds of people. You know, you can't make up rashes. You can't make up bloody noses and diarrhea and vomiting. I am just so flabbergasted. I cannot believe it. And people are just walking around acting like jogging around the tanks of toxic chemicals. You know,
And
what are they?
Zuza, you and I have talked off camera, and it's kind of like this crazy maze to get answers. I mean, you were on the phone with Norfolk Southern, then you're calling this person, then you're calling that person. Before you know it, you spent like 3 hours and you're more confused than before you made all these calls. Can you talk about just the process every day of trying to get answers in terms of reimbursement, in terms of testing, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it's been that way since day one. Literally everybody I call, they, you know, even the numbers. So they went around town, I guess, yesterday, giving out pamphlets with some numbers on it. Apparently they were from, I don't know, FEMA, CDC. I really couldn't get information from any of the hotlines I called, including the ones on that pamphlet. I mean, I called them and they didn't even know where the derailment was. I mean, they didn't know anything about it. It seems like every time you call one person that you were directed to, they, you know, direct you to somebody else who also doesn't know. It's literally every aspect.
Is it these pamphlets here?
Well, I haven't seen all of them, but no,
Because this is the stuff that people have been getting at their doors.
Yeah,
community.
I saw a similar one. It was like a trifold one, but I think it's the same information. I mean, it was basically just talking about.
Yeah, it was the same numbers.
Yeah.
You know, urgent care in Columbiana will not talk to anybody. They refer them to the health department. They have told all the hospitals they can't diagnose anybody with chemical burns. If you go to the hospital with symptoms right now, they will tell you that you have to get a hold of the health department and give you one of those pamphlets with the numbers on it.
The numbers aren't even helpful. I've literally called every single one, and it's just a bunch of runaround. It's let me take your information. We'll have someone call you back. And then someone never calls you back. You call again. They don't answer. Call somebody else. They have no idea anything about any of it. It's weird. They're giving you direction, but then you call that number. Those people haven't even been told about it, seems like.
I chased down an EPA agent that was sitting in front of my house on the wrong side of the road. And I let him know he was on the wrong side of the road. And I actually told him, I said, I'm feeling really loopy right now. I just don't feel right. And he's like, well, I can't talk to you. There's a 1-800 number. And I was like, well, do you have it? And he's like, no, the fire department has it. And I was like, but man, you're kind of in a bad position because people have been driving kind of erratically. They're not under the influence. And I just don't want you to get hurt. And he kept trying to tell me, no, he can't listen to it. He doesn't want to hear it. He can't hear my symptoms, that I have to tell someone else, but you can't get through to them when you do try to call and report anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be clear, so people don't accuse me of dramatizing things. You're telling me that how you feel is similar to drinking too much.
That's exactly.
That is it. Without the fun part of drinking beforehand, it just hits you. Like immediately hits you.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you're going like this. You try to stare straight, but
cleaning
you're
my
still
house,
going around.
walked to the kitchen and felt like I'd been drinking all night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very disorienting.
Joining us now is somebody very familiar with EPA lies and government runaround, Melissa Mays of Flint, Michigan, who was just in East Palestine. I yelled at her off camera for not wearing a mask the whole time. Melissa, so this is not your first rodeo, and you told me this is really bad, what's going on there.
Yeah. My first night there, got into the hotel. We got in there late because we left late from up here. Got a bloody nose. So that was a good welcome. That was a great welcome. And then going, back and forth. The first night I was just talking to people, going to the town hall and everything. We had our masks on. I dropped it when we were taking photos, and then somebody yelled at me. So I got another one from my cohort, Naira Sharif, who is laying down currently, not feeling well. Then we met with Ashley the first night, and then we talked at the town hall. Got to meet all the amazing people that aren't taking it in East Palestine, which is wonderful. And then we were doing samples. I got safety information from several different toxicologists and folks that do work in environmental regulation and environmental science. And we loaded up, we got the supplies. We tried to make it an easy list, which we're working on. So that way residents can go get their own supplies and be able to take their own samples and how to do the chain of command, all that stuff. And then we went sampling, and we weren't doing it very long. We started, at Ashley's house, and then we went to the area where we went to, and we're not giving out too many details just because we don't want other people to try to head us off at the pass. And so we did the informational videos. We did long chain of custody, chain of command, or chain of custody videos. I'm dumb. I'm just going to say that right now. In the video, Ashley pointed it out. You can actually hear me getting dumber. You can actually hear and see me
getting more
not in those words, but no, that's how it felt. Like the more time we were spending, and mind you, we had our N95 respirators on. We had chemical proof gloves on, nitrile gloves on that were thick and went up, the arms, not just the little hands things. We even had booties over our shoes, so we didn't track it in and out of the house, that kind of stuff. And we were being very careful. We were being very careful with everything, and it didn't seem to. It wasn't enough, apparently. And we followed the best advice that we had. Yep, that's us. See, that's us. And it's not like we were swimming, and it's not like we were, Yep. But then we are going to send you clips. Yeah.
If you zoom in, my face actually started to get chemical burn from being out there too long, which got worse a little bit later.
And that's even wearing the respirators. You could still inhale this.
You can smell it, and also they're launching it. They're aerating it. They're launching it into the air. So we're dealing with it being on in the moisture, in the moist air, and of course landing back into the water, onto the soil. So it's not just the dust that you're gonna have to worry about. It's them throwing it back up in the air, and then also talking to Aaron Barakovich and Bob Bocock, showing them what we've got so far, asking questions. Bacteria is an issue, so that's an old friend of mine from here in Flint, and so we planned on doing a few other sites and collecting a few other samples, but then I realized, it started with the sore neck, the swelling, and then the tingling in the arms and hands and my face, Naira, and then we had the throat burning, and all of us, we were vocalizing the symptoms we were having as we were doing it for the videos, the long videos we were doing. And then Ashley started having fingers swelling up and turning red, and her face turning red. Naira ended up getting a rash on her chest, which was not uncovered. Naira's multiple, she had multiple layers, turtleneck, sweater, all that, all the way up to her throat. And then I started having stomach problems. My head was pounding, and I'm like, okay, we have to go. We have to go now. And I mean, it wasn't even a long goodbye. And I know we were going to talk later with some other families and everything, and we had to go. So I said, no, this is wrong. Our bodies are telling us it's wrong. And then Erin talked about it today. She checked in to see how we were feeling, because I told her we got sick. And she said, it's inflammation. That's your body saying, no, no, no. What this is a no. And so, you got to listen to your body. And that's some of the best advice we can give to residents. You got to take breaks, and you have to wear better. If anything, get an N95 mask and be quick in and out. Don't be where they're spraying. And you need to clean. And that was when we got home. I threw every bit of clothing that I had I left my boots and shoes outside, in the snow. And then every bit of clothing that we had, we threw in the wash machine with, antibacterial, soap, as well as, cleaning vinegar, anything we could think of besides bleach to try to, and then also I'm concerned about bleach interacting with some of the other chemicals. And mind you, we weren't in there getting wet. We weren't in there, swimming or anything like that. So, yeah, so this whole day today, my brain's not been functioning great. But yesterday driving home, we almost ran out of gas because I kept pulling over at travel plazas on the on 8090 and forgetting that, we went into go to the bathroom because I thought my body wanted to throw up. So so we kept going to the bathroom and trying to get food, but then we'd turn around and I would forget to pump the gas and we just leave. And I'm like, I'm not this dumb. And I feel drunk, like what Ashley said, without any of the fun stuff beforehand. And I'm like, okay. And so but Nair and I were talking about this on the way home. It's all too familiar, from the heavy metals, from the basically the chloroform showers that we were having here. It's my limbs don't feel attached to me. My brain is not sending the right signals to me, or my body's not receiving the signals my brain's trying to tell me. But then also it felt like our throat was closing up and it was harder to breathe. And so yeah, it was one thing after another. And we know these, and that's the terrifying thing, is that there's so many similarities, and it's basically your body's reaction to chemicals that it's not supposed to have in it. I mean, the heavy metals.
Stella is talking about, there's kids playing by this creek. There's people jogging around here. Like
we saw that.
Pushing
What I want to tell people, and Stella, that's horrifying, especially kids. Like kids. So what I want to tell people is, yes, it's good to go in and help the residents of East Palestine and to record this, but we saw when we were out there, younger people without protective equipment, going and getting little jars of water and then live streaming in front of it. This is not the way you help. This is not the thing to do. You're going to hurt yourself, and you're giving out the impression that it's safe. And I get it. It's because mainstream media and those in charge and Norfolk are telling everybody that it's fine and it's safe, but it is not. So we were trying to stop people and tell them, no, you need to have protective gear on. Don't give out the impression, because you're just recycling the same message that those in power are telling us, that everything is fine, when everybody in East Palestine, they know it's not. But you also don't want to tell traumatized people that are trying to fight for their lives and get answers, that they're being ridiculous for wearing PPE. Or any kind of protective equipment, especially since nobody can even tell these wonderful folks what's all in their air, soil, and water.
And Melissa, I've asked the residents of East Palestine, but you are very familiar with out-of-towners saying to you, well, why don't you leave? Well, where are they supposed to go?
Well, also, since air happens to move, and so does water, by the way, I know that's a big, huge breakthrough. The folks who are like, well, I live 20 miles away and that's perfectly fine. Why don't they just move? Well, how do you know you're not getting hit either? This is going to make its way down to the Gulf of Mexico in the water. So where exactly are are these folks supposed to go? And also, who's going to buy their poisoned homes? That was the same thing we used to say. Are you going to buy my poisoned water house that's been destroyed for what I owe the bank? And then people be like, well, how about you just file bankruptcy and get up and go? And I'm like, oh, that sounds really easy. Also costs money. And where are we going to get that money? And I get to destroy my financial future and all I've worked for because somebody else poisoned me? No. So I will always, always tell people, if you got to go, you go. You go protect yourself and you protect your family, because you got to be alive and healthy to fight the fight. But if you stay and fight, you be safe. But don't let anybody tell you, why don't you just leave? Okay, why don't you come here? And I want the residents of East Palestine, if somebody gives you crap and starts talking to you like that, tell them, well, come on, you hang out at my house. Why don't you come hang out at the creek? I mean, you don't want anybody to actually do that and be harmed. I mean, you don't want non-Norfolk and non-official people to come down and do that. But that we used to invite people, we still do. Come drink some of my water. You telling me it's safe, I will send you freshly bottled, containers from my tap, unfiltered, just for you. And what it smells like and what it feels like. Of course, we did not drink the water down there, but now we're seeing that grocery store, Giant Eagle, is bottling the water down by your river and they're selling it. Oh my God. So hopefully that's not part of the donations, but hey, there you go. Be like,
that was
is
known
it
in our groups for a while. People in our town knew about that in our groups that we talked about, but it wasn't out until recently. And this has been talked about from the time that they weren't sure, from the very beginning on water. Someone had posted a picture of a bottle that said bottled in Columbiana, Ohio.
So many people are like in denial. I couldn't believe. I mean, I still can't fathom that there's huge tankers full of toxic water and soil, and people are pushing their baby strollers around it and jogging around it, and their kids are playing in the spray that's coming off of the pumps in the contaminated creek. I mean, I know everybody doesn't have common sense, but are there really that many people? And how many times I've got shouted out for talking about it. Quit stirring the pot. The EPA, our government said we're safe. Quit stirring the pot. You just want to scare people. You just want to cause trouble.
Well, let me tell the 1,000 people watching right now a couple stories about the EPA. And again, I'm not saying everybody in the EPA is corrupt. There's plenty of good people in the EPA. Melissa has talked to good people in the EPA. Same goes for CDC. But that doesn't mean the heads of the bureaucratic machine are always good. And I'll tell you what, I mean, when I was reporting in Flint, the EPA was testing the wrong way in many instances, and they knew they were testing the wrong way. They were going into people's homes and testing for water at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, when you're supposed to leave that water untouched overnight for 6 hours and then test right first thing in the morning. They were testing while all the water was in use. The EPA looked the other way when they knew the Michigan Environmental Department was literally cheating on the testing. So the EPA is not your Superman here or Clark Kent that's going to come in and save you. And frankly, I don't even know if the EPA fully knows everything about every chemical that came out of that train. So it's very alarming to me that kids are drinking water in the schools, or kids are running through the creeks. And Melissa, I mean, I'm talking to them. I don't see any of this reflected in the national news, that the whole town smells like a gas station, that people are swerving when they drive, that just being in town for a half hour, people are feeling drunk. I wanted to ask you, Zsuzsa, because the financial element of this too, you've been at a hotel trying to protect your kid. Is Norfolk Southern reimbursing you for all of your stay? I know that Norfolk Southern has told people that came to the reimbursement center who have far more than $1,000 in reimbursement receipts. Oh no, you got your $1,000. So how are you, Zsuzsa, and just regular working people supposed to afford survival, which is to stay safe and keep your children safe?
Yeah, you don't. So I'm trying to summarize this as quickly as I can. So we were told last week, the 15th, when the Norfolk's air team came through, they tested our air as safe. They said they were no longer going to reimburse us, no matter what. Even if we were still getting sick, even though there was an overwhelming smell, it didn't matter. So I had somebody call me randomly. His name was John Carden from Norfolk Assistance Center after our test, after we got our $1,000. He called me randomly and he said that he pulled my name pulled my number from my file randomly, and said that he heard that I was still having issues after my air test was okay, because I had been calling CTEC back to get a second test, and he randomly calls me one day and says that. And I said, he said, what can we do to help? And I said, let's get the second test done. Maybe they can have more sensitive tests. And he said, okay, let me call you back. So he calls me back and says they're going to send a team down, and then to continue to come down to the reimbursement center, and they're going to keep covering for things until they get that second test done. So I said, okay, great. Last minute, we drive an hour last minute, because he calls me and says they can see me in like an hour and a half. So we drive all the way down there and they don't show up. They call about 15 minutes before the appointment time, and they said, we can't get a full team here because we need a police officer. And they were with Trump at the time. So they said they'll do it the next day. Well, they never showed up the next day, never called. I've called back, left voicemails. Can't seem to get any information from CTEC of why they didn't show up for the second test that John Carden from Norfolk scheduled for us. So I called John back with the number that he called me from, because that's what he told me to do if I had any issues. The center said that he wasn't there, that I couldn't talk to him. So I went down there, and they told me he wasn't there, and I wasn't able to talk to any manager, because he said he was the assistant manager director or something like that. He said I couldn't even talk to the manager there without my lawyer. And then they said they weren't providing me with any assistance, and they have no idea what John was talking about or why he called me. And they've refused to give us anything. I was really upset. I said, well, why is he calling me, pulling my file, doing all this, reaching out to me, and then tells me to come down there and get this test done, and none of it worked out. And now I can't get any answers or anything. So I have no idea where that's standing now. But that just went down a few days ago.
Well, not that you asked me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. For those that can help, Zhuzha, look at that cute kid, and her 9-year-old son needs some help. So I put the GoFundMe link at the top of the super chat. I'll put it in the description as well. But if you just scroll up in the chat to the top, you'll see the link to a GoFundMe. And unfortunately, this is the United Corporations of America, and the citizens have to rely on GoFundMe rather than their government. But yeah, I mean, what working person can afford indefinitely to stay at a hotel? You're going to probably have to start looking into relocation somewhere. I don't know your situation, if you have a house, a mortgage, all that, but this is just very expensive. And Melissa, you know better than anyone. Norfolk Southern could say whatever the hell they want on CNN and sound very sympathetic. They are going to fight tooth and nail to pay as little as possible. You are the lead plaintiff in the state of Michigan against former Governor Rick Snyder, who should be in prison for poisoning Flint. The state didn't want to pay. They wanted to pay pretty much nothing, but people like you fought. So can you kind of, I guess, advice for Zhuzha and other residents? I mean,
we got, so, and by the way, Erin Brockovich, she just texted, said, hi, stay strong. They're still, obviously working to help. They've got the attorney office open to help with getting the blood and urine tests that they talked about for testing for dioxin and benzenes. And then also your legal rights, because that's very important. So they taught us from early on here in Flint was that this is not a one-way type of fight. This is a multi-pronged, like octopus. So you've got to fight visually with what you're doing. Don't let anybody tell you you're fear-mongering, because that's what they said about us too. You're a rabble-rouser, you're a fear-monger, and you're, all the other words I like to especially call women who have any kind of mouth on them, and stand up. And that's just their cowardice. You just keep doing you keep doing it. And then, so, visually with PR, with independent media, because obviously the mainstream media, when they disappear, which they will, everybody's going to assume you all are fixed, because everybody assumed Flint is fine because the media is not reporting on it anymore. Well, that's not the way it works. It didn't clean our water. And then they turned it into a political battle. So that's the other thing you got to, no matter what, the finger pointing. Both sides are, capable of fixing this. and helping you all. And both sides are responsible over the decades and decades of what they've done, putting profit over people and letting the corporations run this country. So, however, the minute they continue to make it, instead of a public health crisis and a public health disaster and a human disaster, and make it a political fight and finger pointing, Norfolk is going to be able to slither away and not pay anything. And so are the rest of them. It'll be finger pointing and nothing will get done. Everybody's responsible for what happened and allowing it to happen, but also letting Norfolk get away with derailing on average once every 3 days for 20 years. So, I mean, it's not a new thing, but also for putting profit over people. And both sides are capable of helping you all right now and holding Norfolk responsible. Now, that aside, you're going to need to fight in the streets. And except I really don't want you to be in y'all streets, in some streets, but that also means online, uniting together, joining across all the different factions that are going to happen. But you guys sticking together, you women sticking together, bringing everybody in together that's on the same mission, ignoring and staying away from those folks that are in it for themselves and in it for money, because you'll have that and they'll trip up the movement. But you stand firm in the truth and your experiences, because you are the experts on the ground. You're the ones living there. You're the ones that aren't going to be profiting from any of this. You're the ones that are going to be suffering from this. The people who are doing the testing right now are those who are profiting from it. So of course, did I disappear? Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where I went, but also, so you fight in the streets, you collect your evidence, you collect your samples, you go to the labs, you test independently for your medical and your environmental. Can you guys still hear me? Am I disappearing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm like, am I disappearing?
Really odd. Okay. This is really weird.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. This is very weird.
Yes, very. Can you hear me, guys?
I'm back.
Mine keep cutting out. I had to switch devices.
All good. But another thing I was actually going to say, hopefully Melissa comes back, is you also have to be on the lookout for, it's not uncommon for these corporations to kind of try to locate some residents that they might be able to throw some money to kind of sow division, kind of sow disinformation, try to create drama, try to put out misinformation about some of the leading activists and try to make it seem like those leading activists are getting paid, things like that. I saw that in Flint and other communities that the corporations or the state often will try and pinpoint certain residents that they think they could either pay or manipulate to sow division. Because I even see it, not a lot, but in some of the Facebook groups, kind of people bickering, which happens in these situations.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a couple of people who are kind of like simping for the railroad in some of the Facebook groups. Like they just say really weird things like, oh, I don't think Shaw meant anything wrong. Like just give him some time. Like let him fix it. Like just wait a year or two. And I'm like, you don't have to live in it. Like this shit's cancerous. So you fucking wait for 2 years.
Right.
But did they mention to you that they also had really good move ups in the company, being a resident of East Palestine and working for Norfolk? Because I did have one talk to me, and I even spoke with you about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they wanted exactly, and I said I'd want to talk to the CEO. I want to talk to Alan Shaw. Let me talk to him, because I handed out orange flyers. I'm not the only one affected. Knock on each one of these doors that have those orange flyers and ask them how it's affecting them, how you can help them, because they all think something happened from the beginning And to now, that's not being done or fixed or tested properly, or they're having severe health issues and they're stranded.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's odd
And-
that they single people out like that. It's like, why aren't we doing this like on a community level?
Yeah,
I don't-
and then they try to contact you.
Because
I don't
if
know if
they,
that was I don't know if that was Rick Snyder or Norfolk that tried to get rid of you, Melissa.
both. So if they do that, though, if they target people that they can discredit, they'll do it. If they can target people they can buy off, or they see people who are desperate and scared and not sure, and they can try to convince them to simp for them, exactly what you're saying, they will. Because then what they're gonna do is step back and be like, look, we bought it for these folks, we paid these folks, and they're just fine with things. I got told by Rich Baird, he yelled at me, and he was Rick Snyder's, Governor Snyder's right-hand man. He said, well, if I come in and replace all of your interior plumbing and your service line and all of that, will that make you shut up? Will that make you happy? And I said, yeah, sure, if you do it for every single person living here. Oh, he got so mad at me, but whatever. This ain't about me. So that's another thing too, is that forming a group, forming a united front with all of them to pick individuals off. They're still gonna, and you still got to be, cognizant of that. But if you guys are united, it's going to be harder to break you down. It's going to be harder to slow you down. So you fight in the streets, which would be your social media, and maybe outside of the terrible chemical bomb area. But pictures, images, videos, blood tests, urine tests, water tests, soil tests, and we're going to continue to try to find independent places to get, the water and soil tested as we go, different places looking for different results. But then also you got to fight in the courts. So getting the good, interviewing the different attorneys, finding people who have experience, not just folks that are going to make you promises. They should not make you any promises except to fight for you. Fighting in the courts, fighting in legislation. So that's another thing too. Kicking people out of office who aren't going to be helpful, holding them accountable. That's my favorite pastime when I'm not feeling well, is shaming elected officials. So send me links. You guys know how to get a hold of me. Send me links. I got you. So we shame them. We compare them to Flint, because that's to be a big shaming method. Be like, hey, why are you treating your people like Flint residents? Like, oh, we're not. Oh my God. And here's how. And that helps. Staying in the media, continuing, because Jordan and Status Coup, you guys are amazing. And continuing to tell people the story. Everybody who's listening and watching right now, share this out and share the residents' stories out, not the mainstream media stuff, because it's going to be, oh my God, this is so terrible. Just kidding. We're gone to the next disaster, because in this country, we're not doing anything to prevent disasters, only to be like, oh my, clutching my pearls after it happens. So otherwise there wouldn't be more Flints happening. And again, yes, this was a train derailment and a set fire, but this was a decision made, one, to not fix legislations to protect these things from happening in the start. Two, to set fire to chemicals that they didn't care were going to harm the environment and the humans and the animals and the plants for God knows how long. Just like when they switched our water and refused to treat it, they didn't care. It was all about profit. And to me, it seems like it was because we saw a part that where Norfolk Southern during the thing on the town hall on Friday, the attorneys showed that they had done a study when they were doing their budget, and they're talking about their finances in December of 22, saying they had 1.1 billion in insurance for disasters, and if they went over, they had over 12 billion in liquid assets. So, and they make 3 billion a year. So basically, it looked to me like it would be cheaper for them to derail and blow everything up and poison this whole area across multiple states, going down to, ruining the water all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, like they need it. It'd be cheaper than to dispose of it properly. And then they decided to go ahead and haul tankers, multiple trucks at first they said it was just soil, but it's soil and poison water right up to Michigan, so we probably passed them on the freeway.
I don't know if the whole audience knows that, but yesterday they were bringing quite a bit of this waste to, what do they call it? Pure Michigan.
Pure poison.
And Texas.
Yep.
So they were bringing it to Detroit, which is an hour from Flint. Detroit's got its own environmental problems and water problems, by the way, and corruption problems, but that's a different story. So it's pretty remarkable, not that we don't want this removed from East Palestine, but it's not like remove it from East Palestine and just dump it on another poor community that has environmental problems. Because as Melissa could tell you, they don't really seal these landfills properly. They don't.
No, they're dumping it into a hole in the ground. And also, Ashley found out about that before I did. I live in Michigan. And this was, by the way, they sent it to Van Buren Township where Norfolk had just derailed a train up there right after East Palestine. But Ashley found out about it before me. I was driving down and she's like, looks like it's heading your way. I'm like, what's heading? Oh my God. And yeah, apparently two came in before. And so Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingell, they got out there like, what's going on? They got the EPA. They shamed the EPA into stopping it. But then Texas is like, apparently we already had trucks here and nobody told us either. And when Texas speaks up, Aaron pointed this out earlier, when Texas speaks up and says, hey, this is messed up, you know, and about their environment, that's saying something. So yeah, no, and they were just dumping it. And they weren't even through certified ways and all that stuff. So now EPA is like, nothing's going to happen without us checking. And we're like, well, you know, y'all doing great as it is. So yeah, so basically with organizing, it's going to be you guys taking care of yourselves. Don't forget, take care of each other, you know, one another, form your group. And we're going to help you guys with whatever you need with that to make it ironclad. It's a layer of protection. So that way you're not individualized. Continue to report to Jordan and to Status Coup. And also share all the testing, air testing, water testing, whatever you've got. And we're going to continue to help, you know, facilitate the testing. So you're going to fight in the labs, the virtual streets, since the streets out there are not safe. At least our bodies are telling us that, and science is telling us that. And then you're going to be also fighting in the legislation, you know, the ballot boxes and all that stuff, and to change this, because this is a long haul fight, because this is bad, but you guys are stronger and tougher. And so also uniting all of the poison communities, that's the main goal, because then maybe when they realize how widespread this is and how long this has been going on, they'll stop saying, oh, it was Trump, which I mean, yeah, he did roll back the regulations on trade, which I'm sure did not help, but he's not the only one that's been in the process of scaling back environmental regulations and protections and taking the money from corporations versus, you know, valuing the lives of people. So, you know, protecting one another, standing with one another, and cutting loose those who get bought off, and don't let them stop you in your track. Oh God, that's just terrible analogy, but don't let them stop you from the fight, and don't let anybody shut you down. You're telling the truth. You get your facts, you get your research, and you know, people across this country and the world are feeling for you. And that's great. Thoughts and prayers are nice, but donations to these groups, PPE to these groups, helping these folks out so they can survive, because you can't fight if you're not alive. And I mean, I don't know ghost advocacy if that works, but anyway, the thing is that you got a long haul fight, and we need to help you guys out. So everybody listening, watching, whatever you can do to help, but also remember to support independent journalism, so we can continue to, you know, point out that, you know, Flint's not fixed. Ben Harbor's not done. You know, Jackson's not fixed. Mississippi, East Chicago's not fixed. Milwaukee's not fixed. You know, all of these cities. And now we've got this.
Also remember, Melissa, try talking less than 20 miles per hour so we could all hear you, because occasionally you go quick.
No, this is me.
I had that I'm having a hard time keeping up with you. But go on.
No, it's a lot, but we're also going to help put everything in writing. But yeah, you got to fight in the streets, in the labs. You got to organize, you got to stick together, and you got to protect each other and yourselves. And Naira, Sharif, and I are going to help you guys with safety protocols too. I know we noticed that we pulled up in front of Ashley's house. We had a vehicle from Florida pull up behind us and start writing down our plates and all that great stuff, and taking pictures. And we're just like, hey, so we got out, and I'm like, what? Especially when we had the PPE on, oh, people were coming from all over the place taking pictures and pulling off real quick. And I'm like, whatever, you know, but it's probably Norfolk, and it's probably their insurance company trying to, you know, evaluate or devalue y'all's homes and what's going on. But that means you're doing the right thing, but you still have to protect yourselves, and you got to do what's right for you. And if that means, you know, staying in a hotel and staying away, because you got to be here for the fight, and you're smart. Like you impressed me, you know, so, you know, with what you've done, and you guys, and you and Ashley, and these strong women and men that are fighting here, you got to keep it up. And hopefully, again, just remembering long-term, you deserve to be fixed the right way, your version of justice, not theirs. And don't let the polluters and the people that allowed this to happen tell you what justice looks like to you. So, you know,
thanks to the folks that are chipping in, raised $300 already for Juja's GoFundMe. So a reminder, she's trying to raise some money for, obviously, Norfolk Southern isn't doing the right thing. So she's trying to raise some money to afford protecting her kid. Right now she's staying in a hotel because her house smells like a gas station, and has to raise more money because she's going to have to make some choices as far as, Well, I don't want to speak for you. You can speak for yourself, Zsuzsa. What's on the table right now? Because I think a lot of people, some people, are just, my family's here and I'm going to stay. But some folks like you, I've talked to people who are looking into selling their home and not realizing it's going to be very difficult. I've spoken with some folks who have gone to family out of state and have taken their kids out of school. So for you, I'm sure, in addition to trying to get answers from Norfolk Southern, from the government, there's also just this tug of war within. What should I do in the short term and the long term?
Yeah, it's very traumatizing psychologically because like I don't want to uproot my son from everybody he knows and all his friends. I mean, he's in third grade. I mean, that's such a terrible time to like have to restart and without any planning, not knowing where to go. Where is he even safe? We don't know how far this has spread yet either. So that's a concern of mine. I don't want to have to uproot him and then uproot him again. Like when I find out in 2 years that, we're still not safe here. I got a lot of pushback from my son's like dad's side of the family because, they are just believing what they're hearing on TV and, they're acting like I'm being dramatic. But in reality, I mean, this is the most concerning parts of the health aspects of it is like you just don't see anything for years, even decades, even. And, I don't want to condemn my son at 9 years old just because it seems OK now. It's just been really frustrating. And it's hard for me as a mom, to try to explain right and wrong when there's so much wrong, really. And
I want to also point out, because I think it's really important, we don't just have Melissa on for her, brains and terrific fighting spirit. Flint is a real case study for what might happen in East Palestine. Just because it's a little different, there wasn't a train explosion. It was just horrendous government officials, a privatization scheme, switched the water source for a community of 100,000 people without even, hey, we don't need to add the right chemicals to make sure that lead doesn't come into the water. Hey, we'll just, the county will keep them on Detroit's water, but we'll leave Flint on the Flint River, which basically General Motors and every other corporate polluter was dumping in for 100 years. But I think people need to realize, and I hope if there's something good that comes from this, it gets Flint back out there. April is 9 years, and this community in Flint does not have clean water. I don't really give a shit what the EPA says. I don't care what the state of Michigan says. I have eyes, I have ears, and I've been to Flint nearly 20 times, thanks to Status Coup viewers who keep paying for us to report. And we're going to go back to East Palestine, hopefully next week. And I can tell you, I meet people in Flint that still have rashes. I'm talking to people in Flint whose eyes burn in the shower 9 years later. Not 9 months after this happened, 9 years later. We're talking to people Flint is literally a cancer alley. And you have news outlets who say, cancer cluster in Flint. People think it might be the water. Yeah, it just might be the fucking water. I saw that in your local news.
Maybe.
You have people in Flint literally dying of cancers, autoimmune issues, liver failure, kidney failure, people getting Parkinson's. And there was no health registry in Flint for a long time. So why I said I have always covered Flint and continued to cover it, even though it doesn't go viral, even though the national media doesn't give a shit, is because if they get away with it in Flint, that is the playbook for them to get away with it, unfortunately, in a place like East Palestine. And I see very similar things going on right now, Melissa. I see when Flint became national news, it was in 2016 when the presidential election was going on. Well, the media already is fixated on who's going to run in the Republican side. Is Biden going to run again? So they're covering presidential politics rather than a fucking mushroom cloud over Ohio and Pennsylvania. They're airing this guy, what's his face, Alex Murdaugh, this murder trial. I didn't even know who Alex Murdaugh was until like a day ago. And they're airing this murder trial on all the networks instead of continuing to cover this. I mean, the list, I could go on. And it takes us, we don't have any corporate funding. Lewis was there for 5 days. He's the one that broke that the health clinic was a sham. He's the one that broke that they're letting kids drink out of the water. He's the one that broke that they're sending in germ cleaners, literally a cleaning company that only cleans for germs and bacteria. It's not, I don't want to blame the company, like they're not doing anything wrong, but they're not hazmat certified. This is like sending super soakers into a burning fire. So we're the ones breaking this, and national news, they're kind of vaguely talking about, oh, some people aren't feeling well. I'm hearing people are swerving their cars. I'm hearing that people feel loopy and drunk. I'm feeling that children are getting nosebleeds. That's not being reflected, as far as I can tell, in the national media.
I just want to point out too that the cleaners, they're botanical, they're plant-based cleaners that are meant for I don't know, making your house smell nice, but also they're blaming the VOCs, the volatile organic, the not great things that are hurting people they're breathing in on their air fresheners. They also are telling the women the same thing they told us. It's all in your head. So apparently everybody, the 100,000 people in Flint all got eczema the same day and then began having stress and anxiety the same day, the same as East Palestine. So maybe it's contagious. It came down from Flint and got them too. But they're telling them, so this health clinic, I called it negligence, because there are sick people in East Palestine going in to get medical help, to get medical advice. And they're being told it's all in your head. Especially women, you're just stressed out. It's all in your head. In Flint, they told everybody just take some antidepressants, and they're like, well, great. Is that going to help with the bacterial infections, us dying, and the heavy metals poisoning, our seizures, our strokes, any of that stuff? And no. And then they held a skin clinic, same thing. That's why it's so terrifying. They did the same state-run skin clinic in Flint for the rashes and the blisters and everything, and they told people, oh, no, it's just eczema. Or when the Shigella, the other bacterial outbreak, happened, they said, you guys just want to wash your hands after changing diapers. Stop eating poo on your hands. So they're basically telling you that you're dumb. You don't know how to take care of yourself. You're just overreacting. Our current mayor just called us hypersensitive about the water. And this is right during the main break. We're over Super Bowl weekend. We didn't even have running water. And then we had a boil advisory, a filter and then boil advisory. And that just happened. But we're hypersensitive about the water. So all of these very, very misogynistic remarks, very, very but again, it's the psychological warfare that they're putting on these already traumatized people that are just trying to fight for answers and to just get the information they need to protect themselves and their families. That's all they're asking for at this point in time. How do we stay safe so we don't die? And it's the same thing in Flint. If they would have told us that, hey, when we switch the water right away, that the tests were bad, we have bacteria running rampant, people were getting sick and dying, and, protect yourselves, get bottled water, that kind of stuff, it would have been great, because I would have been mad, because we still pay the highest rates in the United States. I used to have a $539 shutoff notice because I didn't pay for 2 months because Christmas and gross. It's still the highest rates in the United States for poison. I still have to pay for all our bottled water and all that great stuff. But besides, they're telling us it's all in our heads. We're making it bigger than it is. We wanted attention. We just wanted to, do this, and we just wanted to make Flint look bad for business and all this stuff. So, I got called the devil. I put a black eye on Flint because even though I'm not the one that poisoned it. So they're going to do that. And that's what they're already doing. They're doing the Flint playbook on East Palestine just a lot quicker, because there was a huge explosion that everybody in the world saw. They weren't able to say, no, it never happened, like they tried to do with the water switch and the chemical bomb they put inside our pipes. And so that's why our infrastructure is still crumbling, and that's why we're still getting sick, is not so much just the water that they're blending and experimenting with. That's bad enough. It's destroying our already rotting and destroyed infrastructure, making us sick. But they're telling people it didn't happen. It's not as bad as you think. The next step is going to be, they're going to grab onto one of the easier to tackle chemicals, like they grabbed onto lead, because that's easier to tackle and to protect yourself from, while leaving all of the cancer-causing disinfection byproducts to the side, the bacteria that's killing people by the hundreds aside, and they're going to focus on that. And so that's going to be the next thing. They're going to find an easy to manage and a less dangerous-ish chemical, and they're going to say, oh, it's just this problem, when it's not. Ashley showed me that the EPA put out a sheet that said, five chemicals you guys have to look out for, but it's actually like 7. And so, so it's leaving out some of these nasty so people don't get scared, and they'll say the same thing. Well, we don't want to scare people by giving them the science information, and which is just complete garbage, because we need the information. We're smart. We're not going to like it, but we're smart. We need this information to protect ourselves, because we can't rely on you. And that goes back to what she was saying earlier about you can't believe people out there want to be normal. It's part of the trauma. Nobody wants to believe that they can be victimized like Flint was. Everybody wants to think they're not like us. And that's why we keep trying to connect all these dots, saying, yes, if you're alive in this country, you can become one of us. And we're seeing more and more cities that are, and becoming poisoned folks like us. But also nobody wants to think that they can be victimized because that means they're powerless. And so they think everything's fine. Why would the government lie to us? And that's a hard thing to swallow, especially if you've been trusting or just going about your life, paying your taxes, voting, doing your normal thing. The government's supposed to not allow this to happen to you. And it's hard to swallow that it's broken and that our lives aren't normal. I mean, you saw people fought back about COVID regulations, and while people were dying, it's just nobody wants the hard fought life they've built for themselves and their families to be disturbed, especially by an outside force and by the EPA and the state and the governor and Norfolk giving people conflicting information. It's building distrust within themselves, and they're not even wanting to believe what their noses, eyes, ears, lungs are telling them, but also they can't believe information from anybody. And they're doing that on purpose to keep people unsettled so they won't organize and fight back. So it is psychological warfare as well. And it also breaks down your immune system. All of these things are all connected. And it's the exact same playbook in Flint. And this is the most horrifying thing ever. And yeah, going down there was tough, and we're going to come back, but we're going to be safer. I just want you all to be safe. Seriously. I mean, I worry about you guys, and, you know, please protect yourselves and do what you need to do. But this is the same playbook. So at least we kind of have an idea of what they're going to try to do next. So we just got to try to stick together and work through it and call their business out as soon as they unleash it or beforehand. So yeah, we just got to keep our brain cells, you know.
Stella, can I ask you, Stella? Because one thing that is just infuriating to me is that in Flint, 9 years later, they don't have Medicare in Flint. I think all residents should have Medicare. Are you hearing from your congressperson, Ohio senators, anybody about expanding health care for the residents of East Palestine?
You know what? We have heard pictures, but we really haven't heard from anybody from the government. You know, we've had people from all over this country, from states away, drive semi-truckloads of water. They have brought food. They brought cleaning supplies. They have brought diapers and formula and milk and things to the city of East Palestine. I might be missing something, but I haven't seen one bottle of water from the government. Nothing. We have heard, you know, oh, we're not going to let this go. We're going to take care of the people and so on. They still are not telling us what is in that water that they're pumping out. We still don't know what's in the soil. Nobody's even mentioned the unrefined oil that supposedly was on the train that got spilled. You know, it's a sad day when most of the information, the valid, important information that I've gotten has been from Nick on TikTok. You know, I'm sorry, but that is, you know, that's where we're getting any information on what these chemicals are or how they react. We certainly haven't heard anything from the government. We've got nothing from them.
And I also want to bring up Ashley, Norfolk Southern tested her house. Shockingly, it was all clear. Oh, they didn't?
They didn't test my house because they gave me a form that I had to sign away, basically allowing them to go inside of my house as well as outside of my house, and had at least 10 different people that were allowed to access, not counting the people that were there.
Gotcha. Because an independent tester tested, and they found moderate levels of total volatile organic compounds. And the independent tester basically said, Melissa, we don't even have the full capability of testing for everything. So they found moderate levels of VOCs, and that's for what they're able to, for what they're capable of. So can you kind of describe, because I think a lot of residents are wondering, well, I'm being told get independent testing, but who is truly independent? Because don't get it twisted. Some people that say they're independent, then later you learn, oh, they get money from the EPA and the state environmental department.
It costs $500 to get a test for dioxin from an independent soil sample. $1,800 for your water and $4,500 for the soil sample.
And now with this, the prices actually went up, because when I called around, as soon as they did the controlled explosion, I called around and talked to a bunch of different places, and the prices have went up dramatically. I was hearing about 900 to 1,000. My air test I was able to work out was $600, but still that's expensive to even get an answer different than what they're showing.
I believe Erin Brockovich and Bob Bocack are trying to find some folks that could come and do it, in mass, but it's not cheap. Obviously, it has to go to the lab, which costs money. Can you kind of tell people, Melissa, because they're just describing, they're calling and getting these outrageous prices.
The
How
organizer
can?
is going to do some testing. They started Saturday. And
Okay.
they have independent scientists, but River Valley Organizing is doing some independent soil and water testing.
Good.
And Aaron and Bob Bocack, and what they're doing is they're also trying to get it to where they can start testing more surfaces, because once the dust settles, literally, there's your dioxin, and that's another thing too. And one of the things that talked about it, there's safe ways to collect samples on your own and to keep them safe and it properly stored, which we're going to put that out there too. For your soil and water. And they talked about even storing your urine at this point until we can get labs that will do it and make sure it's covered. The blood tests for dioxin and benzene, as well as the urine tests, need to be done. And so they actually set up an office in town at the old hotel, and they have the address up, that people can come in and get information and a list of labs that can actually do the blood and urine tests. Now, what we had to learn the hard way was, not everybody that says they're independent are independent. So you have to ask them where they get their funding for this testing, but also what they're going to do with the results. That's something that's important too. Are they going to use it against you? Because ours were weaponized against us from people that we had trusted. So we started to go into outside universities and outside of the state labs to be able to do these types of things. But even then, you can collect the samples, and also you should be there to watch the chain of custody with your samples and see where they're going to go, and demand you have control of the results when you get them. They're yours, not for them to use for their study or for them to withhold from you or to use for whatever profit-making thing they can use it for. And it's also your private information as well. It's your stuff. So you need to make sure you have control of that. But that's something we're going to be putting out as well. And we've got a couple different toxicologists and universities right now that we're going to be sending the samples that we've got the samples that we brought back with us that are on their way to different places that we will not list, but that have nothing to do with Norfolk Southern or the EPA or any agency whatsoever. And also, I think it's interesting that your governor refuses to declare any kind of disaster emergency. Not that you can get a federal disaster, because in this country, states' rights kind of prevented the declaring a federal disaster to where the state can, or the federal government can just come in without being invited. And this prevents a lot of things from happening, and the state staying in control. And so even declaring a federal emergency, the governor, your Ohio governor, could even do to get you guys. The CDC should be doing Casper studies, going door to door to ask people their symptoms. They should start doing medical monitoring right now. They should start collecting samples from folks right now, because this also isn't going to be an immediate, like even with heavy metals, you don't see the full effects for at least 5 years. And that's from the limited information we even had for studies on adults. And also we didn't have them for water, lead and water. We had them for lead and paint and lead dust and lead and gasoline. So we're so far behind on any kind of human-based information with this, but they should be collecting these samples like now and doing a medical monitoring properly, like what was forced to be done with 9/11, but even that took a while. But this is the same type of thing. This is the same type of multi-layered exposure. We don't know it all. We're put out there, but making sure you're in control of the samples and the information, the data, and that, and you can let them, if you want, you can let Norfolk Southern come in, and then it'll be interesting to show, well, this is what they got, well, this is what the independent folks got. And, because obviously, and again, I tell people, like, if you're getting testing done that's funded by, the EPA or Norfolk Southern, the people that are going to be not just but for the cleanup, don't be surprised when they find nothing, because also they're not even testing for dioxin, which is a big big exposure problem that you all are having right now. And, you know, like in Flint, they weren't testing for bacteria, and they could say, oh, no, we didn't find bacteria in the water. Well, you can't find what you're not looking for. So knowing this, you know, you call them out on public pressure, but again, loading up, you know, getting you guys, your voices united and heard and amplified through independent media, and as loud as you can get and as sassy as you can make it, you know. So you do that, and then you continue to run science circles around them, because, you know, you guys are the on the ground experts, and don't let anybody tell you that you don't know what you're doing, because your body and your gut and your instincts are the best monitors. And keep pushing for more testing, more monitoring, and then making sure that anybody that is getting donations on your behalf, make sure it actually is going to you. Like, you know, they're going to have orgs parachuting in from all over and say, hey, you know, we want to raise money for the work in East Palestine. Well, what is that? And make sure it's going to the community, like the GoFundMe that, you know, that Jordan put up, that's going to the families, you know, like to make sure it's going to there, and make sure that any org that is, you know, raising money on your behalf, that it's going to actually help your community. So we had a lot of people making millions of dollars off of Flint, and we never saw any of it. So, you know, it's disaster capitalism at its best, and it's what happens. But it's just knowing that it's a possibility, and knowing that to look out for it. We didn't, and we got blindsided by it. So we're happy to give you the goods, the bads, the uglies, and everything. And then the resources that we have just from what we've learned. But then luckily, there's an amazing, you know, a bunch of people, there are amazing 1,000 people watching, and that are going to share this and everything, that are going to be able to help with their resources as well. So, you know, the emotional support, financial support, journalistic support, all of these things, and emotional support, and just to vent and to tell your stories and to be heard, all matter. So, and then also to make sure you're pushing your own elected officials too, because there's nothing on the books that can protect you from what's been happening so far. And we don't really have any enforcement of the regulations that actually do still exist. So this can happen to you as well. And I'm not saying be selfish and only worry about yourself, but don't think that this can't happen to you. And so you distance yourself from it. I mean, these are amazing humans. Like, we were only there a couple of days, and, you know, you guys are incredible. And just keep up the hard work, because you're not just doing it for yourselves, you're doing it for everybody else, and hopefully can maybe help prevent more East Palestines, help prevent more Flints and everything, so more Jacksons and all that stuff. So we're all in this together, as wonderful / awful as it is. We are, and you guys are fighting back, and that's, you know, extremely commendable.
Before we wrap up, I just want to ask whomever, I think Stella is making a really good point, you know, not that we're pitting adults versus children, but children's systems are not fully developed. So they're particularly vulnerable to chemicals in the air, their respiratory system, their brain development, everything. And as Stella's pointing out, it doesn't seem that the village is basically acting, you know, I know the mayor's got a lot of stress going on, but they're basically letting kids just be kids and run around the creek. And, you know, no, I don't know if kids are really wearing respirators and things like that. You know, is there, in the people you're talking to, Ashley or Stella, an effort to get, you know, protect children more, or are people just kind of?
No.
I pulled my kids out of school, and I actually had to speak with the superintendent and tell my concerns. And when my daughter comes home from school and says everyone looks like they have pink eye, they're itchy, they've got rashes, and then she's complaining of a headache, I don't feel comfortable sending them. And then my son, he's 6, he's getting stomach pains and is having problems. So I called, and they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't even have like a go-to how we went through COVID. So I had to fight with them and even post on their public page saying, hey, I've had a lot of other parents come to me and say they're having the same issues or have reached out to me. And it was about 10 to 15 parents saying, this is what's going on. I'm afraid for my kids. I don't want to speak up, or I've helped with the school and I don't want that to hinder it, but I don't want to put my kids in danger. And it did feel like child endangerment, me sending them, seeing them come back, feeling sick, disgusted, and then it goes away after we're out of the area. It just didn't make sense. And now at this point, they're going to start offering an online, which is better. So we'll see where it goes from there. It should be starting this week for most parents. And I do have a surface test as well that I'm going to get results back from on Monday or Tuesday. So I could share with you guys and see what that gets me, because we could only test for 3 of the chemicals.
And Stella, you said you have 10 granddaughters. Are they experiencing symptoms?
Oh, absolutely. My the twin granddaughters are 13. Actually, their doctor, they went early on. Their doctor diagnosed them with chemical burns in their throat and on their skin. My daughter has been trying since then to get him to, give her something in writing or put it on their My Chart. And he has not gotten back to her. The office has not returned any calls. They are both sick. One of my granddaughters, my daughter Jamie, took her out of town. She won't let her back in town. She's 4 years old. She would spend at least 1-2 days a week at our house. She doesn't understand why she's not allowed to come here. It's been really, really hard on her. My house is broke. My mom has my back. My grandma has my back. I want to see grandma. I want to see Papa. And she can't even come into town at our house. It's just horrible. My other granddaughters, I have one that's 1 and one that's 2. They're not going to come here. I wouldn't let them come here. But I mean, that's the part that people don't understand. I'm not making up this being sick and the rash and the lips and all these people in town being sick. I want my grandkids here.
It's got to be really, I mean, I have a newborn now, 3 months, and my mom it's Christmas. All she wants to do is see her 3-month-old granddaughter, my child. So it must be really tough for you with 10 of them to see them with the physical symptoms, the pain, not really understanding what's going on.
And they all think that I'm Superman, when they have a problem with their mom, when they have a problem with their teachers, or, they'll, grandma, if they want something and they're not allowed to have it, it's grandma. I can't even have them to our house. We've got, 35, 40 bunnies here. We have, trampoline in the yard, a swimming pool. This place in the summertime gets more business than the park does. I can't have those kids come over here this summer. I can't let them come over and play with the bunnies anymore. What's going to happen? Are they ever going to be able to come over here again? The baby's crawling the grass and, oh, look, she's eating grass. Get it off of her. I wouldn't even let them touch the grass right now.
Hi. Before we end, I just want to ask Ashley and, what do you need from people not in East Palestine? Obviously that's a tough question, but people are sending in water. Are there other things you need? Are there sites that they could go to, organizations that you trust that if they donate to those organizations, the money will go to where it is supposed to? As Melissa said, unfortunately in Flint, a lot of donations that went to certain places didn't go where they were supposed to. But, I'm seeing in the chat people saying, tell us what you need and we'll do our best. We should also point out, this is unfortunately not only restricted to East Palestine. I mean, we're going to try to talk to people this week. There's people in Western Pennsylvania that are having symptoms right now because East Palestine is right on the border of Pennsylvania. We've spoken with people 15, 20 miles down the road that are having symptoms. I mean, I'm hearing from people in Virginia that they're getting, sore throats and their eyes hurt. We're hearing from people in the Northeast that all of a sudden at the same time, everybody's cars got weird soot on it. And then you hear from know-it-alls on Twitter, oh, that's pollen. Oh, so everybody got pollen at the same exact time?
Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black pollen too.
So that's another thing. I mean, Norfolk Southern, the EPA, you think they want to acknowledge that this is not only limited to East Palestine?
It's economically devastating. That's what
Right.
that scientist said. If they have to be held accountable for this stuff, and how many people, like you said, there's people states away that are talking about, everybody's like, oh, they're just they're trying to jump on the bandwagon, and you know, they're not giving themselves nosebleeds so they can jump on our bandwagon. Nobody wants on this bandwagon.
What could people do to support? Is there a place they could send water? What else do you need? I think one thing is just keeping the attention on it. Unfortunately, in this country, mass shootings, disasters, the media covers it if you're lucky for a week, and then they move on to the next thing. So that's why we're covering this, and we're not going to stop, because unfortunately, we all have short attention spans, and most people, if they're not hearing something talked about in the media anymore, they either think it's over or getting better. But from what I'm seeing, it's getting worse. And we haven't even mentioned that Norfolk Southern, they just kind of dug over the contaminated soil to get those trains moving. So who the hell knows the ground soil, the groundwater that soil is going into? Obviously, a lot of these creeks connect to the Ohio River. So there are a lot of implications. Even if the creeks that are contaminated, East Palestine isn't getting their water from those creeks. Other places, those creeks are going into major waterways that people do get their water. So I think that it's truly, nobody knows how big or bad this is. And the proof is in the pudding. I trust the residents far more than I do the EPA, far more than I do the CDC. And I don't think everybody's making up that they have nosebleeds, vomiting, diarrhea, their eyes are burning. And by the way, when people say rashes, I'm not a doctor, but I spoke with someone yesterday. In most cases, those are chemical burns, not rashes. So, yeah, what can people do?
We do need actual respirators, because if we continue to collect more evidence, and even with my tests, I can only be in my house for about 10 to 20 minutes, and it induces vomiting. You get sick. You feel like that drunk feeling, tingling in your mouth. Some kind of medical apparatus or a chemical apparatus we could wear, or anything to put over our clothes to get more of these tests to help people. Because like what I sent to you, I want everyone to know what tests I'm getting done. I want to share it with the people that may not think that this is an issue, that they're being told it's stress, to get themselves out of harm way if possible. I know people do need help with hotels paying for those, but it's the individual people that need help. So sending it to East Palestine as a whole, like a lot of people have said, we haven't seen it. And I know people that have to leave for the weekends, they can't stay in their home, but they're staying there to work. So they'll go and stay at a hotel, and a lot of their money that they get from their paycheck is being used to support that life in a safer area. I do have a GoFundMe, and I'll continue to get tests and help out other people in the community. I'm not sure how I can share that with you guys now. And
I'll send that to me. And after this stream, folks could look in the description under the video, so you could chip in to Ashley's GoFundMe as well. Obviously, you know, if you can, everyone's tight for money these days, but we'll put the link to Ashley's GoFundMe under. And, you know, people are not asking for money so that they could go have a nice dinner. They're asking for money so that they could be safe. And Ashley's got kids that are unfortunately having symptoms.
And we don't know if we can take that stuff with us. So if it's contaminated, I don't want to bring it into an area where I'm not having a reaction currently. So what I took that Friday night, whenever that fire broke out, is what I had. I've had help with clothing and other things like that. I don't have a big necessity need. I mean, everyone has seen me in the blue sweater, but I'm perfectly content as long as I'm helping people out there. But we know our house may never be livable again. So if that's the case, this would help us get a jump start to keep helping people, to be safe and our health to be good, to go back in there and actually help the people and check on people. I've went door to door talking to people like we've talked about, and they've all told me a sad story or how they're stuck. So I want to keep checking on those people, making sure they're okay and they're not suffering in their home.
And I would say to the people, I'm not a psychologist, don't feel like you're too cool to wear a respirator. You might think it looks weird. Well, you will kick yourself in 5 years if you have cancer, in part because you didn't wear a respirator. And even wearing a respirator, it might not be totally foolproof, but it's certainly better. We're not talking about COVID here. We're talking about petrochemicals. And that's stuff you can't play around with, including your children. Stella, any last words before we Go.
I just pray that people will just stop and look. That's all. Just open your eyes. You know, please close that park off while it's being used as a place to store that toxic waste. I mean, these kids deserve more. There's nobody. It's up to us as adults to make decisions for them. They can't make their own decisions. And obviously, people are deciding it's A-okay for them to go play in this water, or it's A-okay for them to go hang out at the tanks at the park. Just at least stop it until they find out what's in the water and the dirt. You know what? It wouldn't be the first time I've been wrong. Maybe there are no dioxins in there. Might not be. But if there's a 1 in a million chance that there is, for God's sakes, don't let the kids play in them. I'm just sick over it. I've done foster care for 40 years. Kids grow up to be people, and everybody, we're East Palestine strong. We're East Palestine strong. I'm one of the strongest people that I've ever known, and I am not strong enough to look at one of my granddaughters and tell them, you can't have babies because I decided to go sit down and shut up. You have leukemia, or you have diabetes, because I just didn't want to say anything because people said I was stirring the pot. You might be strong, but nobody is that strong. We got to stand up for, at least for the kids, if we can't stand up for ourselves.
And as Melissa could tell you, when somebody tells you to don't stir the pot, stir that fucking pot more. Excuse my French. Because if everybody just accepts the government line and accepts, oh no, all this stuff that smells, it's in your head, it's not really there, then you're just going to slowly be poisoned. People need to speak up. And for those telling you you're being dramatic, I don't want to judge people, but I question what they're experiencing, because my reporters were telling me their eyes were burning, their noses. I was yelling at them to wear respirators, but whatever. And they said that for them, it was after being out 16 hours a day talking to people, they weren't feeling great. So it's not just, it's people that come in. You mentioned a New York Post reporter had nosebleeds. So I think to the people kind of telling you pipe down, I really question. I question that. Melissa, any last things? And by the way, as a reminder, because these communities need to stay strong, we had a lot of people watching today. Flint has contaminated water 9 years later. Let that sink in. An American city was poisoned by its government, and that government, instead of spending the money to really fix it, they just covered it up. They gave filters to the people of Flint. They did EPA testing and declared the water is improving. Meanwhile, people are still getting rashes in Flint. That's 9 years later. And the media says it's fine. So we need to not just focus on East Palestine, but Flint and the many other places that are basically, I think, being used as sacrificial lambs.
And that's it. And that's the big thing, is that Flint's still not fixed, so are these other cities, because nobody's paying attention, or because people buy what the government has to say and they try to shame the pot stirrers, and they try to shame them into silence. So no, Flint is still not fixed. We still have people with thousands of parts per billion of lead and bacteria and carcinogens, all the great things in our home. And East Palestine, just because they're saying it's fine, especially if they're drinking municipal water saying, oh, it's fine. What about the folks who have well water? And also, how long till all the contaminants that landed in that soil sink into the groundwater and get the wells, but then also get into your municipal system? That aside, the whole thing here is to listen to the people, Listen to what the residents tell you they need. Stop saying, well, if I were you, I would. Well, guess what? You're not the folks of East Palestine. You're not the folks of Flint. I am a Flint resident. I'm a Poison person, but I'm not these amazing women in East Palestine. But I'm going to stand by them and I'm going to help them in any way I can and listen to them. So instead of judging, saying, well, you should do this and you should do that, you're from the outside, you support and you help. Not just to help these amazing fighters and survivors. You do this to help maybe try to prevent this from happening to you, but also maybe you can learn a little something on what to do if and when it happens to you and your loved ones. And I always say about Flint, and same thing with East Palestine, like I said, Benton Harbor, Jackson, we're not victims. We've been victimized. Make that clear. But we're not sitting around helpless doing nothing, waiting for somebody to come save us. We're fighters. And that's what we're doing. And so you support, you respect the shit stirrers, you respect the pot stirrers, you respect these strong women sitting here putting their lives and their bodies on the line to fight to protect the ones they love. And that's what you should be doing when it happens to you. So support these folks, get them what they need. And again, let's not just sit here and expect these impacted residents, these directly impacted folks to do all the work themselves. Maybe we can, as a community, can talk about where to send these supplies going off of these ladies' guidance. So let's listen to the folks who are on the ground. Let's listen to the actual experts instead of saying, well, the EPA said this, the media said this. You listen to the people who are on the ground. Those are the experts. They'll tell you what's going on. And they're faster and better scientists than the other ones that are bought off anyway. So yeah, don't you judge unless you want to be walking in their shoes. And then, hey, you know how to Google Maps yourself over there. So anyways, my love to you ladies. We're going to be back. We're going to continue to help. You're amazing. Please stay strong, but also remember to take breaks and take care of yourselves because we need you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
So that was Stella, Juja, Ashley, Melissa. Apologies for any connection issues. I almost feel like we were being jammed by some jammers, but that's neither here or there. We're not going to stop covering this. We have a ton of other interviews we haven't even published yet. Louis DeAngelis did an incredible job in East Palestine. Him and I are going to be talking, and he's going to be going back there, I'm hoping, within the next week. We need your help. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Reporting this kind of on-the-ground reporting costs money to send a reporter, a camera person. Just this week cost us, I believe, I'll have to look at the receipts, but this is kind of the estimates of what it cost us. So for Louis and John, between the two of them was $3,000. Then you had the hotel, car, food was $2,000, flights there and back $1,600. So that's almost $7,000. And we had an extra $1,000 cost because we had to get custom Wi-Fi because the Wi-Fi was really bad in town. So we got a hotspot that cost us $1,000. So I am so appreciative. This week we had 81 so far, 81 new paid members. That's folks that signed up to support us financially at statuscoup.com/join. Let me just shout out a couple of the latest that joined. Shout out to Carly signed up, Melissa signed up, Sherry signed up, Jacob signed up, Emre signed up, Maribeth signed up, and Sharon signed up. So that's 6 new members signed up while we've been live. I would love if we could get to 100 new members for the week. Again, with those 4, that's 85 new folks signed up. Listen, I'm just going to be straight up with you. There's a lot of outlets out there on YouTube that ask you to financially support them, and they're not on the ground doing what we're doing. No disrespect to those outlets. Obviously folks can support whoever they want. But if you do have $5 to $10 a month, we have levels of membership as low as $5 a month. If it's within your means, please consider supporting us because it's really, really important when you have national media and you have local media basically just regurgitating whatever bullshit is being fed to them by the EPA, by the governor of Ohio, by the transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, by Biden, who hasn't really said much about this. It's very important to actually have independent, keyword, independent journalists on the ground who do not take money from big banks, who do not take money from fossil fuel companies, who do not take money from big pharma, from big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex, who do not take money from major donors who buy off the politicians in the Democratic or Republican Party, whose funding comes directly from their viewers. Because when you are funded directly from your viewers, Lewis, you are liberated. And the only people you need to answer to is your viewers. You might think that's cheesy, but that's truly who we have to answer to, our viewers. I don't have any fat cat financial sugar daddy or sugar mommy that influences what we cover or how we cover things. So we want to keep covering it. But like I said, to have a reporter, obviously Lewis needs to pay bills, camera person, rent a car, food, hotels, flights, everything. It all adds up. So if you don't have the money to support us, monthly, we totally understand. If you do have some funding to help us, statuscoup.com/join. You could become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. By the way, with your membership, there's also perks. We do a monthly call with our members through Zoom, which I think we're going to do this coming week. Hopefully Lewis can join so you guys can ask him questions about his reporting. We like to give you some behind the scenes of what's going on with Status Coup, what we're working on. So that's through Zoom. If you don't want to be on camera, you could just mute your video camera and listen. But we usually go for about an hour and a half, 2 hours with our members. We also do behind the scenes videos for our members from the road. Also, when you sign up as a member, you get access to our Discord channel. We have a members only Discord channel. So we try to give you some perks too as a member. So hopefully you could sign up. For those who have signed up this week, thank you. This is not the only story that we cover that the mainstream media does not cover. Lewis was in Jackson, Mississippi, covering the water crisis there, still going on. We have been to Flint many, many times. I will be going back there hopefully in April to continue covering the ongoing water crisis in Flint. April would be the 9-year anniversary. I'm also writing a book on Flint that I'm trying to get a publisher for. If you are a publisher or an agent, email me, info@statuscoup.com. I'm working on a book right now. I've written 8 chapters. We went down to Cop City in Atlanta and covered the protest against what could be a 200-acre militarized police compound in Atlanta. We were as far as I know, the only independent outlet there. Over the summer, we went on an economic Hunger Games reporting tour where we went to Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia in 8 days. We covered 3 states. We did so many interviews with people being crushed by inflation. We interviewed homeless people. We interviewed people that are literally scavenging in their couches trying to find change just to fill up the gas tank. We interviewed people saying that the police are hunting the homeless. We did such, I think, important reporting that you will not see in corporate media. And if you're new to this channel, if you just found us, please subscribe, share this content. Maybe you can't support us financially as a member, but you can support us just by liking the content, sharing, leaving comments help. So please support us if you can. It makes such a big difference. And we really thank you. We have other videos and interviews Lewis did that we'll be publishing as the days goes on. So thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your weekend. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to continue covering this. Like we said, we briefly touched on it. They tried to move some of this waste to Michigan before the EPA, because of criticism, the EPA stopped it. We also want to focus a little more this coming week on people outside of East Palestine that are having symptoms. I'm hearing from people in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia that are having symptoms. Remember, this toxic cloud, the wind took it elsewhere. So it's obviously, first and foremost, we want to focus on East Palestine, the residents there who are talking about vomiting, diarrhea, nosebleeds, headaches, eyes burning, feeling loopy, feeling like they drank too much. They're describing people swerving in their cars. But there's people I've talked to out of the state that are having sinus issues, throat hurts. We don't know everything that spread through this train. I'm not sure I believe that they have revealed every chemical on that train. And it is super important. I believe we live in the United Corporations of America. The media is part of the United Corporations of America. Not all media, but most media, in my view, exists to cover up corporate media, local and national. They exist to cover up what's going on. We should be hearing from these people on CNN, on 60 Minutes, on PBS, on NBC, ABC, CBS. We should be hearing them talking about that their city buildings, that their creeks smell like a gas station, that people are feeling loopy and drunk, that people's homes smell like gas stations, that people's noses are bleeding, that Norfolk Southern is cutting off people for reimbursement. Why are we not hearing that in the news? Why instead are we having to watch on CNN and MSNBC a fucking murder trial of some scumbag from the South, Alex Murdaugh? Is that more important than a petrochemical explosion? A petrochemical mushroom cloud? This murder trial is more important than that? I'm pretty sure that there's plenty of East Palestine residents and surrounding residents that would jump to continue talking to the media. It's a crime that the media is leaving, and it's a crime, in my view, they're probably not going back. Lewis had to leave because he had something on the calendar already, work-wise. We're going to be sending him back. We're not just leaving. And when we send him back, trust me, it's not going to be trending anymore. The rest of the media aren't going to cover it. We might not get 1,000 live viewers next time because people will move on to something else. But you better damn well believe if you're an old-time viewer of Status Coup or a new-time viewer, we are going to stay with it. Because I believe, and I think Lewis believes this too, this is about what kind of country you want to live in. You want to live in a country where these people of America are poisoned by either the government or corporate America through no fault of their own, and then through no fault of their own, the government and the corporations cover it up, tell them everything's fine. The tests are fine. Go home. Resume your life. Oh, yeah, we'll give you $1,000, the corporation says. Hell no. I am not going to stand by. Status Coup is not going to stand by. I don't care if people say, Jordan, you're supposed to be neutral and not show so much emotion. If you're a journalist and you are neutral to people being poisoned by their government and by corporations, and by the way, government and corporations are the same thing because we live in the United Corporations of America and our government has been purchased by corporate America. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I hope you see our government is corrupt and purchased by corporate America. But I do not believe that we should allow Americans to be poisoned and then allow a cover-up and then leave them to slowly die. Journalists should not be okay with that. Journalists should be the first ones screaming from the rooftops. This is not okay. We need to continue telling these resident stories as long as it takes. Thank you so much for the $100 super chat. That's very generous. Stay with it, Status Coup. Give the victims in these locations the voice corporate media will not let them have. That is the plan. That is the plan. I apologize that if I missed super chats. Colin usually sends them to me, but Colin wasn't around for this. So if I missed your super chat, I apologize. Let me read this one. Maria, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, Maria. Let me see if any of them. That's the bad thing about YouTube. They go away after a while. Here we go. Dave L, $5. There's an East Palestine Community Foundation. Is that still a good thing? That I'll have to ask them about. I will start putting in the description links to organizations that the residents tell me they trust. So I'll start putting links in the descriptions of videos, and we'll put those links in previous videos. So if you want to support, you can. Stay safe, Status Coups. Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate that. Did I miss any others? All right. Those are the only ones I see. And as a reminder, before you go, if it's within your means, I put the GoFundMe for Zhuza, who is on. She's got a 9-year-old son. She's been staying at a hotel because her house is unsafe. It reeks of chemicals. So Zhuza's GoFundMe is right there at the top of the chat. I also put it in the description. If you look back, I'm also going to be putting Ashley's GoFundMe. She's a resident and she was on. So I'll put her description in and anything you could leave. So far, a lot of you have generously donated to Zhuza. I see it's up to $450. Let's see if we could get that up even more for the residents. So I'll put Ashley's GoFundMe in there, and Juja's is already in there. Thank you guys so much. Keep coming back to the channel because we have other interviews that Lewis did that we're going to be posting over the next few days. And we'll be live again tomorrow during the day with continued coverage of the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. And one thing you could do is subscribe to our Substack, which you could subscribe for free because we almost always post on Substack right before we go live. So if you don't always get a notification on YouTube that we're live, you'll get a alert from Substack that we're about to go live. And that's statuscoup.substack.com. statuscoup.substack.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your